Acum am ajuns la zona de biometrie, de autentificare a tranzacțiilor și ceea ce propune TypingDNA, pentru că următoarea companie este TypingDNA, este această journey, această călătorie către noua generație în ceea ce privește autentificarea pentru canalele digitale. Dacă vreți, a journey towards next gen authentication for digital channels, cum sună ea în engleză, prezintă Alexandru Iosif, care este account executive pentru TypingDNA. Alex, bine ai venit, abia așteptăm să vedem detaliile prezentării tale.
Bine te-am găsit. Mulțumesc mult pentru invitație. Noi am decis să păstrăm în engleză prezentarea noastră. Ne gândim că sunt și mulți oameni în industria de banking din România care nu sunt vorbitori nativi de română și le este și lor mai simplu așa. Imagine us working in the past couple of weeks, looking at all the case studies, all our customers, all our numbers, everything that we have gathered over this past couple of years. And we just got a feeling that it wasn't right. Something was missing. And when we put everything together side by side, all our experiences working in the banking industry, we then had that aha moment. And we said, okay, we got it. We know what these people gotta know and understand about how things work. So my talk today will be structured around talking a little bit about TypingDNA, what we do, our product, going in very slightly into PSD2, strong customer authentication, and how that impacts authentication in digital channels. And then I'm going to go into the challenges and the solution that we found to work perfectly every time when somebody tries to use a new authentication mechanism in their digital channels. So a bit about our company. We are a behavioral biometric company. We started here in Romania. We went after global customers starting from day one. Our first customers were in the US, and even now most of our customers are in the United States and some are in Europe. We are venture-backed. The latest investment round was closed this January. The lead investor was Google. And ever since, we've doubled down and used all that investment money to have even more breakthroughs and promote this technology that only a couple of years ago, nobody knew that this was something possible. And the technology that I'm talking about is keystroke dynamics or typing biometrics, meaning recognizing people based on how they type. If I were to break down the solution into 4 easy and quick to understand steps, at first we record the behavior of the typing, then we send that behavior to a cloud where the features are extracted, and this is a very important step. So step number 2, the feature extraction, where we look at those traits that are very static throughout a person's lifetime. We push those features through our machine learning algorithm, and then at the end we give out a risk score, which generally feeds into a risk engine, or it can be simply used as an authentication mechanism. So you can use that score as a classifier, right? If it's above a certain threshold, you say, okay. If it's below that threshold, you say, nah, let's try again, or let's push and fall back to a different authentication system. And really quick, I want to get into the type of data that we look at, and this ties in very much to strong customer authentication and PSD2. So for desktops with physical keyboards, such as the laptop that I have in front of me, we are looking at key press and key release times and mouse movements. For mobile devices, we're looking at also key press and key release times, but we also track sensory data from the accelerometer and gyroscope, which allows us to have incredible accuracy when authenticating based on how users type. And what I want to tell you is that the really, really amazing part about the way that this solution works is that it's device agnostic. So there are the two device groups, physical keyboards and digital keyboards. And those two behaviors, the typing behaviors themselves, are distinct, right? I don't type the same way on my keyboard the way that I do on my phone, and the other way around. But within the two device groups, there is similarity, a lot of similarity. So once you have a person logging in and signing up and enrolling a typing behavior on their laptop, they can authenticate on the desktop or on a different PC somewhere else. And it goes the same with phones. So when somebody enrolls their typing behavior on a phone, and I don't want to name a famous phone brand here because they haven't sponsored the event, but they can switch phone brand and it's not a problem. Even if it's larger, smaller, that accelerometer and gyroscope data helps us establish the way that people would type on any phone. So I want to touch really briefly on PSD2's strong customer authentication. For strong customer authentication, the regulation says you need 2 out of 3 elements, right? And the 3 elements are knowledge, possession, and inherence, right? Something only you know, something only you have, or something only you are. And you need to tie 2 of these factors together in order to have what we call strong customer authentication. Now, the framework for inherence elements was a bit unclear. So last year in the summer, I think in June, the EBA published an opinion where they complete and sort of go through what they understand through each of the authentication elements, including inherence. And as we see, for inherence element, you have keystroke dynamics, retina and iris scanning, fingerprint scanning. So all the inherence elements that we too consider inherence elements, the ones that are important for the technology that we provide is keystroke dynamics, which is key press, key release times. And the last part, the angle at which the PSU holds the device, right? So I mentioned the accelerometer and gyroscope, that's exactly that. So these are the 2 elements that we provide. For desktop, we just do keystroke dynamics, but for mobile devices, we do both keystroke dynamics and the angle at which the PSU holds the device. So what we propose, and the easiest solution, which we believe will take over most of the authentication space, is tying a knowledge element to an inherence element. And people generally have run away from the knowledge element, and now we are seeing, at least in the US and Western Europe, a return of the knowledge element paired with behavioral biometrics. And the way you can do it is you run typing biometrics either on username and password, or a PIN, or some secret words that only the user gets to know. So this is sort of the way that we imagine this to be happening. You look at the way the user types the knowledge element, and what you do in essence is, from the user's perspective, there's only one authentication stage, right? But from your perspective, you have the knowledge element and the inherence element both at the same time. So here's the part where, you know, it all tied together. And as I said, we were looking at a multitude of case studies and customers, and we found that, at least in Europe, these are the most common challenges. But the solution that we found to all of these challenges was the same. So it's a framework to think about behavioral biometric authentication in general. And the challenges in Europe, at least, is, first of all, compliance, right? The deadline is pretty soon, so I'm sure that everybody listening already has compliance. Maybe not an ideal way to solve it, but there is compliance. I'm certain about that. But the challenges are, right, so you need to achieve this compliance, but you also need to change users' behavior. And changing users' behavior by requiring an additional factor generally is hard. The users are sometimes unpredictable in the way that they act. And it's also very risky, so you might end up overestimating the tech savviness of your users, the adaptability of your users, and just plain and simple, somebody out there might have a more user-friendly authentication solution in place, and yours might become annoying. And in this space of multiple authentication systems, the last and final challenge is actually looking at possible methods of authenticating, because there are so many methods and it's really hard to actually know what they do and how your user base reacts to them. So what all our solutions that we have had so far have in common is they have this structure. There are two phases when rolling out any authentication technology. There's the 0 to 1 phase and the 1 to 100 phase, right? The 0 to 1, let's call it the POC. What's required for a POC is it needs to be cost effective, it needs to be non-disruptive for the current, both for your workforce and for your customers, and it needs to be a valid testing methodology. You can't test, if you do a POC that's not relevant, it's useless, right? And the beauty here is, and this is the novelty with behavioral biometrics when comparing to other biometrics or other authentication systems, is that behavioral biometrics can run silent. And this is exactly what we propose when talking to our customers, and this is exactly what has been the most successful way of doing things. So you just select a small batch of users, you still keep in place the normal authentication framework that you had in the past, you just run TypingDNA silently on the user credentials of a small population, and that's it. The users don't have any disruption in their behavior, but you get valid testing samples and data. And the second stage where it becomes challenging over time to maintain something is the full rollout, right? What we call the 1 to 100. And for this, any authentication the solution needs to be scalable, versatile, and flexible. And here again, behavioral biometrics as an AI-based solution has this beauty of being centralized, cloud-based, and device agnostic. So once you push it out there, it's really hard to have any challenges in terms of making sure it scales properly or maintaining it. It's centralized, so once you use it in one application, you can use it across applications. It's device agnostic, so it can be used on any device. You don't have a challenge with users changing their phones or changing the hardware that they're using, because you already know how you're expecting them to type on that. And of course, the flexibility that you gain from a cloud-based solution, that you can scale it whenever you want, is an added bonus. So like 5 points on what's important for a POC. Always determine first the channel that you need. This is very important because people want to run it everywhere. We recommend choose a channel, stick with it, let's try it there. Determine the user sample size. As a rule of thumb, 1% of the entire population is more than enough to create relevant data. Keep the current authentication status quo, as I said. Just run TypingDNA silently on that. The period you should expect for this, for a successful POC, is somewhere between 2 and 4 months, depending on the number of iterations, because it's AI, so you can always play with it, you can always adjust it, and we provide advice for that, and then you evaluate the results.
Alex, now that you finished your presentation, I think we can switch to Romanian, if you are agree.
Sigur.
Întrebarea pe care am primit este legată de reacția băncilor din România la oferta voastră. Cât de deschise sunt ele în ceea ce privește această biometrie pe zona de autentificare?
Sunt foarte deschise. Diferența cea mai mare dintre băncile din România, și de aceea am vrut să și alegem subiectul ăsta de framework-ul acesta de testare. Diferența dintre băncile din România și băncile din străinătate este că Și nu peste tot în străinătate și nu toate băncile din străinătate. Dar evident e o piață mai mare și mai dezvoltată și au acest statut al bugetelor de inovație. Din păcate, la noi nu există o cutumă fixată că, domne, trebuie să se dedice anual niște resurse către a testa o soluție. Și există o reticență la nivel de, cred, la nivel de management, de multe ori, să investească în soluții de autentificare noi pentru a testa noi soluții. Avantajul cu o soluție de biometrie comportamentală care e cloud-based este că e foarte eficient din punct de vedere al costurilor și al user experience-ului să o testezi. Și prin chestia asta am avut foarte mult succes și foarte multă deschidere și curiozitate din partea băncilor. Mai trebuie doar să se ia acei pași, să se pună într-adevăr pe buget un minim de efort pentru testare și investiție în astfel de soluții. Nu veți găsi o soluție de autentificare mai ieftină de pilotat decât ceva de biometrie comportamentală.
Și o ultimă întrebare, pentru că până la finalul anului există acest mandat pe Strong Customer Authentication. Cât de pregătită este piața și cât de mult poate să ajute TypingDNA prin ceea ce aveți voi de oferit?
Piața era pregătită, cred, și de anul trecut. Deci toată lumea avea o soluție. Nu cred că a rămas cineva pe afară. Nu prea am găsit însă oameni să fie fericiți cu soluțiile pe care le-am. Și aceasta este situația peste tot. Adică nu este ceva surprinzător că a venit această legislație deodată și ne-am putut trezi într-o situație în care nu aveam cea mai bună soluție pentru utilizatori. Ce sunt curios este după 1 an, 2 ani, dacă se schimbă ceva în perspectiva și opinia despre soluțiile curente și se alocă bugete pentru schimbarea acestora. Am primit semnale foarte puternice de la oameni care deja aveau niște soluții care sunt frecvente în piața românească, că apar în timp niște probleme cu utilizatorii și cu costurile operaționale de rulare a celor soluții. În special dacă ne gândim la chestii de genul soft token, am auzit foarte, foarte multe probleme la device switching.
Alex, cam atât ar fi pentru astăzi din partea noastră. Îți mulțumesc foarte mult pentru prezență, mult succes în continuare